Hi everyone, Tom Chapman here, and welcome back to my MapTool tutorial series. Today we're going to be talking about keyboard shortcuts in MapTool. Now what's nice about these keyboard shortcuts is there's a lot of things like locking players to your view or pulling your players to the correct map that MapTool has embedded in it. And what I want to do today is share with you some of my favorite shortcuts that I use a lot in my at-home games. So we're going to switch over to MapTool. Now what you see here on the left, we have my GM screen, and on the right we have the player screen. And this is what I'm going to use to show you everything that I use and what it looks like on the player's end. To start with, let's start by talking about navigating through maps. So one thing I wanted to touch on first is when we click up here on Select Map, you'll see all of my maps listed. I have them numbered so that they're organized. But all of them are with a white background except for Adventure Progression. If you look at that, it's got diagonal gray stripes going behind it. What this means is that this map is not visible to players. It says that right up here. So if I tried to force players to this map, it would not work. And in fact, on the player side, when they click Select Map, they can see everything except for the Adventure Progression. What I want to show you real quick is how to make a map quickly visible or invisible. So right now this is visible. If I were to hit Ctrl H, it makes this not visible to players. So it disappears over here, it disappears from view on their select maps, and it tells me map is not visible to players. To undo it, just Ctrl H. Now that the map is visible to the players, let's say that we're not on the right map. We're here, we don't want to be here, we want to be on the lower level. That's where we were last week. So I'm going to scroll out. This is the map view that I want them to be on. So instead of asking the players, hey, go to select map, can you select this map? A quick shortcut is Ctrl E. Ctrl E forces the players onto your current map. So if you noticed over here on the player side, everything changed and it loaded the map that I'd like them to be on. However, they cannot see the view that I have. They're zoomed in here on room 18, which brings us to the next shortcut that I really like, Ctrl F. Ctrl F forces the player's screens to be exactly what your view is. So if I were to zoom in on room 15, and that's where I wanted everybody to be, Ctrl F, they'd be on room 15. Something to note that the players must all be on this map currently to be forced to this view. So it usually has to go Ctrl E and then Ctrl F. The other option that I learned about recently, but I don't use it as much, is Ctrl Shift F. This forces the players to follow your view of the map no matter where you go. So I'm going to hit that Ctrl Shift F, and I'm going to move to the left. And the player map follows along with everywhere that I go. I haven't found a use for this yet, but some people might like it, so I thought I'd share it. Ctrl Shift F to undo it. Next, I'm going to go back to my upper level. I have a PC token right here in room 1, so I'm going to Ctrl E, go to the right map, and then Ctrl F, go to the same view as me. So I have this hero token here. Let's say you've got 4 players and they're all playing on different computers and everybody's dragging and clicking and moving their tokens all over the place, and they're getting into stuff you don't want them to get into. They're going through doorways and they're all over the place. If you want to stop that, there is an option for locking player movement. The keyboard shortcut for that is Ctrl Shift L, and that'll lock them. So I can move the tokens over here, but when I'm a player, if I try to click and move, the token doesn't go anywhere. So it kind of makes sure everybody, when they get to a spot, isn't just meandering around or moving their tokens out of combat and things like that. To unlock it, we just hit Ctrl Shift L again, and they can move their tokens again. Now on some maps, this next part is unnecessary. So with this map from Paizo, the grid is already embedded into the map. It makes it pretty easy to see. Now I'm going to zoom in here. If I want a better grid, I can hit Ctrl G, and the black lines show up. Now what I want you to notice is they showed up on my map, but not on the player map. If anybody wants those grids, they have to, on their screen, hit Ctrl G. And Ctrl G, again, just turns them back off. You may not need these for your map. I tend to only have the grid lines on when the scale is more than 5-foot squares. So let's say they're 10-foot squares, but I still want all the 5-foot squares, such as on a map I showed in the first video. Now the last thing when it comes to navigating maps that I just found out about and is really cool, I would never use it on my GM map, but I would definitely use it on the player map. So I'm going to go over here. It is Ctrl Alt Enter. Now this is really cool. So this means that when you put MapTool up on a TV in a living room when you're playing with other friends, this makes it so it takes up the entire screen. There's no macros around the edge. There's no chat bubble that shows up. It just shows you the full screen. I will definitely be using this soon. Now on the GM side, this last one that I want to show you is helpful for you, but I don't know how much you would want to use it with your players. The command is Ctrl T. What that does is it pops up the name of every token on the board. Now, there's some overlap here, but that overlap goes away as you zoom in. And this allows you to see what you're looking at. Now, let's say I took these skeletons and I said, make them visible to players. Force them to my view. So I can see the names of the skeletons, but right now the players are going, I want to hit the top right one. But maybe it would be easier if I came over to the player screen and hit Ctrl T, and they could say, oh, I want to hit enemy number 1. Okay, that makes it easy. Now I can track it better. And to turn it off, same thing, Ctrl T. For now, I'm going to get rid of these skeletons because I don't need them for this next part. So right-click them, make them invisible. What I want to show you next has to do with movement of tokens. So we're just going to mess with our PC token here. And I'll show you over here. What's really cool is for tactical games like Pathfinder or some versions of Dungeons and Dragons, is you need to know the exact distance you have to get to an enemy. What happens, it's an option to select when you start the server. You can click and drag, and it shows you how far you're moving. If you notice underneath my player token, it says 20. I have it defaulted 1 square equals 5 feet. I've moved 20 feet to there. Now, combat isn't always clean in straight lines. It'll even do, it'll help you out with this, with the diagonal lines, and show you how the rules would normally say that for tactical movement. But sometimes it's just not straight enough. Sometimes you want to come up to avoid an attack of opportunity or something. You want to move up 10 and then move to the right. So when I move up 10, I'm going to tap spacebar, and it adds a waypoint, and then I can move. So that red dot is added, and it shows that I have a right angle there. Tap it again, I've got another one. Tap it again, I've got another one. And it just will allow you to make some interesting moves if you need to. Or, for example, going upstairs. I want to get to this corner. Well, I'm not going to walk through a pillar and jump up a 5-foot rise to do that. I'm going to come over here, and then I'm going to tap, and then I'm going to move up there. Now you can turn off the movement distances by hitting Ctrl D. So if I hit Ctrl D and then I click and drag this again, there's no player distance or movement distance in this case. And to turn it back on, I just hit Ctrl D again and it turns it back on. One last part about movement I should talk about. I mentioned that this kind of defaults to like the Pathfinder D&D 3.5 sort of movement. So one thing to note is if you have one diagonal, it still counts it as 5 feet, but remember that the second diagonal in these game systems counts for twice as much, so these 2 squares are 15. That rule's already built in. I found that very helpful when I was running Pathfinder games. I'm going to move this token back up here, and we're going to deal with some vision for right now. There's other vision things I'll talk about in a later video, but for right now I wanted to show you some special ones. First off, Ctrl K. Ctrl K, when you push it, shows you who has or where there are light sources in a room. This matters for the night option for vision, but for right now it just shows you a little light bulb. It's really hard to see on these 2 tokens that I've selected, but it shows you that this skeleton and this hero both have a light source. This is helpful if you're wondering, where are the light sources in this room? Where did I put torches? And then to turn off that view, you just hit Ctrl K again. A review from last video, remember that Ctrl W turns on and off Fog of War, but it leaves what has been discovered, if you notice. So room 1 has already been found by the PC, so when it's turned on or off, that doesn't reset that. The other helpful thing I find, depending on what you need it for, Oops, let's turn that back on. Let's say I discover a bunch of rooms and I get all the way to here. But then I go back to room 1 and I don't want the PCs to see all that anymore. I can hit Ctrl Shift O and it erases everything that's been discovered except for where the token is or where the player tokens are. So that'll help you if you ever need to clear a map again. Now to get rid of this last little bit, you'll have to go ahead and select the Fog of War option and Shift, click, drag, and cover it back up. So that's it for keyboard shortcuts that I tend to use. There's a few more that you might find useful, but those are the ones I use the most. I'm including the link in the description below so you can peruse that. There's just a few more, and some of them have to do with facing or certain aspects of token movement that I have tended not to use. So, well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.